Good morning. Hello, everyone. I'm Kathryn from the Sewing Studio Fabric Superstore and the Sewing Studio at Lady Lake. So this week's 5-Minute Friday is Fancy Fabric Folders. It's actually a free tutorial that I found online from Sew Michelle. She has a wonderful website with embroidery designs and sewing patterns, and this is actually a free tutorial. So this is what we're going to talk about this week. So I'm going to start by talking in words, and then I'm going to go ahead and show you some quick samples. Because the tutorial is available for free online, I'm going to just kind of march through it sort of quickly and give you some extra tips on the places where I found a little bit tricky for myself, because I don't know everything. All right, so first of all, again, the name of the tutorial is Fancy Fabric Folders, and it's from sewmichelle.com, and you can find it in her tutorial section. And this is what it looks like, Fancy Fabric Folders. So in her tutorial, she's got picture, very well written instructions. And by the way, she does make a note at the beginning saying, please read through entire set of instructions before starting. And that's always a good idea. All right, so we have Fancy Fabric Folders from sewmichelle.com, her tutorials. All right, so the stuff that you're going to need. All right, so for this fabric folder, you need 2 contrasting fat quarters, or if you want to have a little bit more wiggle room, you want to have a little bit more of a safety zone, you can use 3/8 of a yard of 2 contrasting fabrics, okay? All right, so once you've got that, you are also going to need Pellon Peltex 72F. Now, this is a double-sided fusible. That means it's fusible on the top and bottom, and it's a very stiff, heavy stabilizer. So let me show you what that looks like. So it comes on the bolt like this, and it's probably about 1/8 of an inch thick, not quite, and it's got glue on both sides, so you can actually feel that texture. So it's Pellon Peltex 72F double-sided fusible stabilizer. Then you're also going to need heat and bond iron-on vinyl if you choose to have some protection on your folder. As you can see, I've got quite a bit of a gloss on that. So this particular option or version, the way that she has it in her instructions, allows you to have some protection against your beautiful fabric choices. Okay, so once you've got that, you're also going to need a friction marker, because you need to mark out the folder on your fabric so you can cut it. And of course, you're going to need a file folder so that you can have it as a template. All right. So the first thing that you're going to do is fuse the Pellon Peltex 72F to the wrong side of the fabric. So again, that looks like this, that you have your one fabric with the right side down, wrong side up, your double-sided fusible Pellon Peltex 72F in between, sandwiched in between your second fabric with your right side up, wrong side to the stabilizer, okay? So that's how you're going to do that portion right there. All right, once you've done that, just follow your manufacturer's instructions on ironing. You're going to trace the outsides of the file folder and the center fold with your folder. So if you can see here, I've got my 2 fabrics, and the white of the Pellon Peltex 72 is in there. So I basically am going to lay my file folder on it and trace the file folder. And then I found it also very easy, because you're going to end up putting a seam in there. At this point, if you can just fold up your file folder and also trace this center line right here, okay? So you'll trace that out and then cut it out. All right, once you've traced the outsides of the folder, you go ahead and cut it out. You cut it out of both sides of the fabric. All right, now the choice is, do you want a monogram or not monogram? So on my particular monogram that I did, I went to my Brilliant Stitch Artist, and I created a fancy frame, and I created a satin stitch dot outline, and this S was from the True Type fonts that I digitized. So that's what I wanted to do, because I like things to be monogram, but not everybody likes that. So you don't have to if you don't want to. To be or not to be, that is the question. Okay, so then you're going to fuse the vinyl onto your fabric on the inside and the outside of your folder. So you can see I've got that shiny gloss inside and outside. And again, it just helps offer some protection for that beautiful fabric. Once you've fused that vinyl to your fabric, you're going to trim away any excess vinyl. All right, then at the end of it, you're going to want to do some sort of decorative stitch on the edge. You can just straight stitch if you want, but I kind of wanted to give a little bit more coverage on the edge of my folder, so I used a RicRack stitch. This looks like a 3-lined zigzag, down and up on your machine. But of course, those 3 lines happen on top of each other. So it just gives it a nice contrasting pop of color around the outside of your folder. Now, once you've done that, you have to do your 5 center seams. So along this wrinkly part, I've got my 5 seams, my center fold, and then also my lines on either side of that and lines on either side of that. So you've got 5 seams here which help crease your folder so that when your folder is done, it's easier to fold it in half so that it stays nice and together. They just kind of help force that crease for you. Okay? All right, now if you choose not to do the vinyl, if you want to just have fabric without the vinyl, that's totally fine. You do you, boo. You can also just do it in a self-binding kind of way. So with self-binding, you would trace the folder out just like you do on the other version. You would cut it out just like you do on the other version. You're going to fuse it to the wrong sides of the fabric and trim your lining. Okay, so if this is my folder on this one, in order to have a self-binding, my exterior fabric, my proper fabric, is going to be further out or away from my interior. So when you're trimming just the lining, you're going to trim the lining right exactly to the edges of your cut out folder. Okay? So once you've done that, you're going to go ahead and trim the exterior fabric. In this case, it's my yellow fabric, the outside of the folder, 5/8 of an inch away from the edge of the Pellon, okay? Once you've done that, you're going to turn the exterior fabric into itself in half so that way you can then also turn it into the edge of the Pellon. So it's a turn in half and a turn in. That way the fold is on the inside, so you have nice finished edges inside of your folder, okay? And again, at this point you would just decorative stitch around the edges of the folder. Something I did find quite tricky is the curves. When you're at these curves trying to force that little fold and fold, the turn and turn of the self-binding in, I found that quite tricky, both on the top side of the curve and on the bottom side of the curve. So just make sure you take your time, give it an extra press if you need to. The steam always helps kind of relax the fabric, and do your clipping so that you can get that fabric to turn itself, kind of spread itself out a little bit. Once you've done that, again, at the same time, you're going to do exactly the same thing here on the bottom, your 5 seams here in the center fold area, which helps force that crease so that the folder stays folded together in kind of that book shape, that book form. And so again, something I didn't talk about before, but I'll just show you real quick, is the vinyl. It's just from Heat and Bond, or there's some other companies that make it. So you can use that iron-on vinyl, and of course I liked the glossy finish. And just follow your manufacturer's instructions as far as ironing it onto the fabric. So it's pretty simple, stuff you might not have used before. The double-sided fusible Pellon Peltex 72F is actually quite easy to sew through. It's not really stiff. It has a little bit of body, but it really does hold its structure and its form. As you can see, as I set it here, it's set up real nicely. It just stands up all on its own. Even when I sewed this one with the vinyl, I didn't have any trouble slipping it underneath the machine. So the fact that the vinyl is on there it's such a smooth finish, but there's the thinness of this particular iron-on vinyl just coasted right through the bed of the machine, and I had no trouble working that through the bed of the machine. I didn't even use a Teflon foot. So it's much easier than you might think. It's a very cool project. It's something you can do with holiday fabric if you're in a mind to do that. It bangs out really, really quickly, so you can give it as a quick gift if you're going to be headed anywhere over to a friend's house for a birthday party or anything like that. If you know any college students, this might be a cool thing for them. You could use sports fabric or themed fabric in that fashion as well. So there's some real good things that you can do with this, and I hope it inspires you. For more inspiration, you can always check out our blog. If you go to www.sewing.net, in our blog section, there's tutorials there, 5-Minute Friday tutorials, as well as a bunch of other tutorials that we have. Other clubs, bag clubs, and quilt clubs, and tips, tools, and techniques. They're all there for you to take advantage of. I hope that we can educate and inspire you. We're also on YouTube. If you search for the Sewing Studio Fabric Superstore on YouTube, we're the big purple dot. And I hope to see you, and I can't wait to talk to you next week. Thanks so much, everybody. Bye-bye.